From the city street shootouts of Heat to the creepy clown masks found in the Dark Knight's opening moments, there's something alarmingly alluring about the Hollywood bank heist fantasy. Fortunately, the excellent Payday series has been letting me live it out for myself for more than a decade without needing to establish a rap sheet. The next chapter in this long-running burglary simulator, Payday 3, has finally been released from custody, and though it continues the series' tradition of delivering one of the best digital smash-and-grab experiences out there, the usual horrible Payday bugs, a dinky pool of jobs to tackle, and a predictably weak story mean it's not exactly the giant leap forward I was hoping for.
We need more information to get to the bottom of this conspiracy.
Still, if Payday 2's post-launch support is any indication, this is at least a very promising start for what could become another decade of happily pistol-whipping cashiers and fixing drills.
Move in for the kill!
Like its predecessor, Payday 3 is a cooperative multiplayer FPS where you and 3 friends take on increasingly elaborate heists. The extremely thin story focuses on the same motley crew of criminals as they're forced out of retirement by a secretive cabal of shadowy and generic silhouettes.
I still have a few more cards up my sleeve, but we need cash to keep on pushing.
Unfortunately, and perhaps unsurprisingly, the story itself is just a sequence of slides, with voiceover justifying the string of jobs you'll undertake, with precious little to tie them together.
I'm just glad it's over. It started to go crazy.
As if this mission, where you work with Ice-T, needed any justification.
So you need to figure that shit out when you get there.
But even if the story never really takes off, it does do a good job at setting the stage while hinting at what the future might bring.
I say we find something worth stealing.
And then we steal it.
Yeah!
Within seconds of beginning my first robbery at the obligatory local bank branch intro level, the movement and gunplay already felt enormously upgraded relative to Payday 2. You move faster overall and could do more modern action game maneuvers like sliding, which I found useful in combat as well as for stealth. Weapons feel punchier and more satisfying, even if they are burdened with hopelessly small magazines and long reload times before you've spent some of your ill-gotten in-game cash on upgrades. You can even use civilian hostages as meat shields now, forcing your law-abiding enemies to engage you in melee to avoid hurting an innocent soul, which is a nice touch. After years of incremental updates to Payday 2, Payday 3 immediately feels like a proper sequel in the gameplay department, even if the formula of breaking into vaults and throwing bags of cash into an unmarked van remains identical. Payday 3 also raises the bar with the quality of its misadventures, in that the vast majority of the 8 available jobs are super well designed. Many feel like instant classics, like this art museum's delicate puzzles and labyrinthine halls hiding priceless art to be pilfered, or this fantastic bank heist that throws you into the most elaborate old-fashioned vault break-in yet. The developers at Starbreeze have definitely upped their game in terms of variety and quality with these base stages, and I found myself immediately repeating a completed job more often than not, just to practice my strategies and explore other possible outcomes.
That's it. Patch me in through the terminal.
That said, there are still some weaker levels, like this combat-focused mission that has you guiding an armored van over a bridge with very little room for deploying different strategies and no stealth option whatsoever. Thankfully, that was the only one of the 8 that was especially weak, and the highs of the good ones far outshine the lows of the less interesting choices. While almost all of the new heists are great, it is a bit disappointing that there are so few of them after such a long wait. Presumably, that library will expand dramatically over time, just like the previous entry did. But for this review, I have to talk about what's in front of us at launch, and after just 5 hours, I'd already completed all of the available jobs and had begun the endless grind of repeating those same gigs over and over again. The saving grace there is that repeating these missions is a lot less monotonous thanks to the variety granted by adding stealth options. Because of that, most jobs feel like 2 separate levels in one thanks to how differently they play from run-and-gun playthroughs. In many ways, the changes to Payday's stealth mechanics are even more significant than any improvements to movement or combat. Only the most committed and elite players stood a chance of pulling off a totally clean heist in Payday 2. In contrast, Payday 3 provides new mechanics to support stealth right away, like the ability to pickpocket security guards, to relieve them of their key cards, or use environmental objects to lure them away. That means pulling off a clandestine operation here is almost immediately achievable, even with a randomly match-made group of players only loosely communicating with one another via text chat. That's also largely owing to the clever and fantastic ways its missions are designed, in which stealth runs are now given a completely different route to success. For example, this level normally requires us to go the humdrum path of using thermite to burn through the top of the bank vault, then dive in from the floor above before making off with the loot. But this series of objectives smartly only triggers as your primary path once someone on your team gets caught. Before that, your crew can take the much more complex and rewarding route of breaking into various parts of the bank to sabotage electrical systems and deactivate security measures to gain access to the vault without anyone being the wiser, which is essentially an entirely different mission if you can pull it off. That's rarely easy because guards now investigate suspicious activity and do a whole lot more than shoot you when you're spotted. For example, if you're found in a private but not entirely suspicious area, like the back office at a bank versus the vault, instead of immediately trying to kill you, they'll simply escort you to a public area and give you a good tongue lashing, which can be used by cunning players to remove guards from their posts temporarily.
I'll need you to come with me. This area is restricted.
That smarter AI extends to combat as well, where the police do a great job of swarming you from all sides instead of standing around as target practice. Which leads me to one of the most exciting changes to the heist formula. Each job now has specific phases, meaning that instead of either being an unmasked stealth mode or chucking grenades around like a maniac, there are now defined moments in between those two extremes that allow for different parts of the crime fantasy to be more thoroughly explored. For example, the searching phase triggers when you've caught the authorities' suspicion in a minor way and they begin actively looking for you. But all hell hasn't broken loose just yet, and the negotiation phase begins if you ever get caught outright and gives you a window of time to lock the place down to prepare for a fight, or buy time by releasing hostages. It certainly helps that zip ties required to keep hostages in line are no longer a limited resource too, so you're able to stack those poor bystanders as high as your heart desires as resources. It's also still a ton of fun to make your way down Payday 3's role-based skill paths while out committing misdeeds, unlocking more abilities within those roles to bolster your preferred playstyle. That could be the hacker path, which turns your lawbreaker into a tech wizard who can hack into security cameras and confound security systems. Or the manipulator path, which grants you a silver tongue for intimidation and negotiation.
Hold it! Get down!
You can have 4 of the 17 available roles equipped at a time, and you can spend your skill points within those however you like, which allows you to create the perfect villainous cocktail without wasting any cherished points on stuff you won't use. It's also nice that you level up and upgrade each of these roles by simply equipping them while out on crime sprees, which really rewards you for picking your knavery niche and sticking to it.
Suck the floor.
Unfortunately, as always seems to be the case with Payday, severe and horribly painful technical issues have returned like the cold sting of the law. Not only are the usual connectivity issues back, but there's occasional frame rate hitching, people walking backwards for no reason, and more. Even the menu barely works at times, and I'd often find it completely unresponsive as I spammed buttons before it finally did something crazy like this. I'm really hoping they iron this stuff out, but given that past entries have remained busted for months and years before finally becoming stable, there's definitely cause for concern that we're in for another rocky ride. Payday 3 is a solid step forward for my favorite heist simulator franchise, even though that step is a lot smaller than I'd hoped due to a lack of launch content and the unsurprising but still majorly annoying bugs and performance issues. The awesome combat, greatly improved AI, and especially the stealth options are so massive, they alone justify this as a full sequel. and the new and improved heists with clear phases to navigate them are absolutely fantastic. I just wish there was more loot in the proverbial vault at the outset, and that Starbreeze would have used its years of experience to ensure that this was a more robust and far more stable launch. I'm confident Payday 3 could become the sequel we all deserve with a year or two of updates. For now, it's a nice start. For more, check out our reviews of Lies of P and Mortal Kombat 1. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
I got this out.